Bolivia's former interim president Jeanine Añez has been arrested over the 2019 coup. Iran and Russia extend their partnership agreement until March 2026. And India promised to produce at least 1 billion more COVID vaccine doses by the end of 2022. Hello and welcome to teleSUR. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez in Quito, Ecuador, and this is from the south. Bolivia's former interim president Jeanine Añez has been arrested over the 2019 coup in which she replaced former President Evo Morales. The conservative politician had faced an arrest warrant on charges of terrorism, sedition, and conspiracy in connection with the 2019 November coup against Morales. Ahead of Añez, Bolivian authorities have already arrested former Energy Minister Rodrigo Guzman and former Justice Minister Álvaro Coimbra on Friday. Meanwhile, the former head of the armed forces, Fabio Arce, was apprehended on Wednesday, while the ex-police chief, Vladimir Calderón, still faces an arrest warrant among various other officials. The bodies of 16 Guatemalan migrants who were murdered in January in the Mexican state of Tamaulipas have arrived in Guatemala. The Guatemalan government declared 3 days of mourning, while the National Council for the Assistance of Migrants handled the transfer of the bodies to their home communities. On January 22nd, Mexican authorities documented the discovery of about 20 burned bodies inside a truck near the Rio Grande. The families of the victims from San Marcos, a border city with Mexico, were the first to be notified after having alerted that they had lost contacts with their relatives on January 21st. Colombia's Lake Suezca has dried up due to a drought showing the harsh realities of climate change. This is the second time in a decade that the drought has brought this natural water reserve to the brink of extinction and leaving local residents fearing the worst. In 2006, the lake was declared a biodiversity reserve as part of the fight against climate change. Authorities then committed to an environmental plan to stop the planting of grass for cattle in the area and the extraction of water with motor pumps. In Peru, voters remain divided as general elections scheduled for April 11 are nearing. Opinion polls show presidential candidate and former Congress member for the Popular Action Party, Johnny Lescano, is leading the 13% of voters' support. He's followed by the three right-wing candidates tied with 7% each. The polls show high levels of possible abstention as 21% remain undecided regarding the 18 candidates, while 60% say they plan to leave their ballot blank. A runoff election will be held if no candidate secures sufficient support in the first round. A Peruvian prosecutor on Thursday charged presidential candidate Keiko Fujimori with money laundering following a 2-year investigation. Fujimori is accused of receiving illegal campaign funds from Brazilian construction company Odebrecht to finance her 2011 and 2016 presidential campaigns. After 28 months of investigation, prosecutor Jose Perez formalized his accusation against Keiko and 40 others, including her husband, for organized crime, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. She was detained from October 2018 to November 2019 for the same corruption case. Ecuador's National Electoral Council has set the campaign spending limits for the two presidential candidates who will run in the second round on April 11th. The limit established for electoral campaigning through state-owned advertising companies will be just over $1.2 million. The split between both candidates, left-wing Andrés Arauz and right-wing former banker Guillermo Lasso. The Electoral Council explained that the limit on the amount of money that can be spent on campaign events, such as rallies, is over $2.9 million, corresponding to 40% of the amount set for the first round. According to the electoral schedule, the campaign will begin on March 16 and end on April 8. In Argentina, social organizations are undertaking a global day of action on Twitter to demand the release of social leader Milagro Sala. The global action comes 5 years after Sala's arrest. Through their message, activists intend to draw attention to the arbitrary and unfair circumstances in which the social leader was arrested in 2016. In this sense, they demand to end the political persecution against her. Sala is serving a 13-year prison sentence for the alleged misappropriation of public funds destined to the construction of housing facilities by cooperatives and social organizations. Forest fires in Argentina have left at least one person dead and 11 missing, according to authorities. The fires that hit this week in the Patagonia region held to dozens of people having to be evacuated, while initial assessments of over 200 homes destroyed. On Friday, firefighters finished extinguishing the flames in the Andean region, located at some 8,800 kilometers southwest of the capital, Buenos Aires. During the efforts, the charge remains of rural workers who had been missing since Tuesday were discovered. The governor of Chubut province has stated that the fire was initially intentionally started. More stories coming up, don't go away.
Acompañamos a los pueblos que resisten en cada una de sus luchas.
Somos esa ventana que se abre para visibilizarlos entre fronteras.
Thursdays, only on teleSUR.
Pakistani journalist Tariq Ali analyzes the international media influence driven by the empire, accesses analysis of political, economic and social life throughout Latin America through our stream and website in English, a critical space committed to truth to determine the conjuncture that moved the world today. The World Today. Mondays on teleSUR. Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomy. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. Iran and Russia have extended their comprehensive cooperation agreement until March 2026, strengthening their strategic alliance in the face of Western sanctions. The two nations agreed on a 5-year extension to the agreement signed on March 12, 2001. In this context, Tehran and Moscow have deepened their cooperation for mutual development. Authorities also rejected the unilateral sanctions imposed by hegemonic powers, as well as the interference of the United States in the internal affairs of the nations that do not vote in their interests. Thousands demonstrated in the Algerian capital Algiers on Friday to reject early legislative elections announced on Wednesday. Protesters linked to the anti-government Hirak movement defied a coronavirus-related ban on gatherings to rally in different parts of the capital before covering on the Central Post Office. The movement's emblematic rallying point The people also took to the streets in other parts of the country. President Abdelmajid Tebboune said June 12th for the early legislative elections after he dissolved parliament last month. The vote is part of the president's promised political reforms following protests by the Hikak movement that forced his predecessors to resign in 2019. The Lebanese capital Beirut saw protesters this Friday over deepening poverty and political inaction, calling for an immediate transnational government. This country is experiencing a severe economic crisis with surging unemployment and spiraling prices, with the local currency that has plunged to a new low.
Our presence here today as young people is to bring that spirit back to the people, to show people that the revolution is still happening, that spirit is still here. We don't want to migrate. We, the Lebanese youth, are here, and we are staying until our last breath.
Minneapolis City Council has approved a $27 million wrongful death settlement in the civil lawsuit filed by George Floyd's family. The settlement is the largest pre-trial settlement in a civil rights wrongful death case in U.S. history, according to the family's lawyer, and results from a federal lawsuit filed in July 2020. Former police officer Derek Chauvin is currently on trial, facing murder and manslaughter charges for Floyd's May 25th, 2010, which was captured on video by people and sparked outrage around the globe. 3 other officers also face charges linked to the killing. And the Floyd family lawyer, Ben Crump, announced the settlement and stated that the family's position on the matter, noting that it represents an advance for social justice.
It is my great honor to announce that George Floyd's family, our legal team, and the city of Minneapolis and its leaders have settled the civil lawsuit in the death of George Floyd. The settlement is not just historic because of the $27 million paid out, but for the impact on social justice, policy reforms, and police reforms.
This Friday, March 12th, was the 25th anniversary of the enactment of the Helms-Burton Act, United States legislation that codifies the blockade against Cuba into a law. The act was passed in 1996 under the Bill Clinton administration with the name the Cuban Liberty and Democratic Solidarity Act. However, the legislation does not promote any of those things. This illegal mechanism is contrary to international law and seeks to intensify the obstacles already imposed by the economic, commercial, and financial blockade that the United States government previously imposed against the Caribbean island. Since the law was passed, the U.S. State Department has applied measures against companies and individuals who want to trade with Cuba. The third title of the Helms-Burton Act was implemented under the Trump administration, having not been activated by any other president before him, thus extending the coercive policy against the island, widely denounced by the international community. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has outlined a series of measures which he said will lift the country's economy, pledging to bring the inflation rate back down to single digits. In an address to business leaders in Istanbul, the president also vowed to reduce public expenses and narrow the current national deficit. Turkey's economy was already suffering when it was hit by the pandemic, with the local currency depreciating the record levels due to the concerns over economic mismanagement, central bank reserves, and tense diplomatic relations with neighbors. Annual inflation stands above 15% and unemployment at around 13%.
We will give approximately 850,000 small businesses tax exemptions and leave their obligation to file taxes. Our economic reform package will safely carry Turkey into the future. It includes concrete and solution-oriented policies.
In France, more than 200 undocumented asylum seekers and their supporters gathered on Friday in front of the Paris to denounce the fact that they were unable to get appointments to fill their applications for the resident permits. The demonstrators carried banners reading "An appointment for all" or "Prefecture impossible to make it an appointment." Elected officials and associations have strongly criticized the obligation to submit digital applications for resident permits. On February 18th, the Administrative Court ruled that an order issued by the prefecture requires foreigners to complete their application online was illegal. And we're taking one last break, but stay with us.
We share your feelings, exalt your accomplishments, and show your reality. Our approach is global and keeps us in tune with the peoples. Caribbean countries also get our signal. With enthusiasm, we will continue to broadcast for them. Because we are teleSUR, the news broadcaster from South America and the Caribbean.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Lives, Fridays, only on teleSUR. A review of the world news that investigates, incites analysis and induces criticism, because every event has a context.
Pusimos el punto en la I.
Dot in the I. Saturday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back. India will produce more than 1 billion COVID vaccine doses by the end of next year in an initiative launched Friday with the United States, Japan, and Australia as the four countries held their first ever joint summit. Bowing to show concrete results, the so-called Quad Alliance announced that Indian company Biological Limited will manufacture at least 1 billion additional vaccine doses by the end of 2022, focusing on the single-shot US-developed Johnson & Johnson jab that was approved Friday by the World Health Organization. India, a global pharmaceutical hub, is already sending vaccines to 70 nations. The Quad Alliance, or Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, is an informal strategic forum seen as part of the Biden administration's plan to contain China. The World Health Organization said Friday it was assessing reports of blood coagulation disorders faced by some people who were inoculated with a specific batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine distributed in the European Union, while stressing that the shots are safe to use.
They are looking at these particular signals, and will meeting soon, and will advise WHO on any new safety signals or concerns about any vaccines. And they're currently assessing the reports on AstraZeneca. And as soon as we've got a full understanding of that from our committee, we will communicate that to the public. Vaccination against COVID-19 doesn't reduce deaths from any other causes. Thromboembolic events do happen in the population, so it's not clear whether this is something that was going to happen or whether there was any relationship. That's why it's important to always review any signal like this.
The World Health Organization has announced it had granted an emergency use license for the coronavirus vaccine made by Johnson & Johnson.
We hope that this new vaccine will help to narrow vaccine inequalities and not deepen them. The COVAX facility has booked 500 million doses of the J&J vaccine, and we look forward to receiving them as soon as possible. An equitable distribution of vaccines remains the biggest threat to ending the pandemic and driving a global recovery. As I said last week, one of the major challenges we need to solve is how to dramatically increase production of vaccines.
Australian Chancellor Sebastian Kurz on Friday defended his country's decision to temporarily stop using on one batch of the AstraZeneca vaccine.
For me, it is important to say that we never make the decisions for political reasons, but that decisions are made based on the experts. Anytime if there is a suspicion or if there is a death that occurs not long after vaccination, then it has to be very carefully investigated, of course.
The Austrian Chancellor also criticized the vaccine delivery strategy of the European Union.
Deliveries are not made according to population key. There are indications that this practice will intensify in the coming months and that the differences between the member states will become greater and greater. These delivery plans clearly contradict the political goal of the European Union, namely that all member states should receive their share per capita equally.
Brazil's federal health regulator has approved the AstraZeneca Oxford COVID-19 vaccine for widespread use, as well as the antiviral medication Remdesivir, the first drug for the patients hospitalized with the virus, after the country reported a new single-day record of COVID-19 deaths.
The benefits outweigh the risks, and the data support the registration of the product AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine. We don't currently see any risk to the population's health related to the use of this vaccine, and therefore our recommendation is to proceed with registration.
The Argentinian government has reduced flights from Brazil, Mexico, the United States, Europe, and other countries to prevent a second wave of COVID-19 due to the British and Brazilian strains of the virus. President Alberto Fernandez's government announced the tighter measures, while noting the measures will continue to be evaluated according to the epidemiological situation in the country. International flight frequencies are to be reduced by 20% from Brazil, Mexico, and Europe, 10% from the United States, and 30% from Chile, Colombia, Ecuador, Peru, and Panama. People will also be asked not to travel to or from countries where the UK strain is present. Controls on travelers arriving from other countries will also be conducted, including PCR tests and monitoring of passengers' mandatory isolation period of 14 days from arrival. The second stage of the Soberana COVID-19 vaccine clinical trials continues. As announced by the provincial government of Havana on Twitter, the inoculation started on March 10th in 30 clinical sites of the capital, and the intention is to administer shots to 40,000 to 44,000 people during this phase. As the authorities revealed on Friday, the trial vaccination will continue in 48 healthcare centers. Likewise, the Cuban biotechnological and pharmaceutical industries group, BioCuba Pharma, announced on Thursday that the entire Cuban population will be immunized against COVID-19 before the end of 2021, based on the proven efficiency of its vaccine candidates Soberana and Abdala. And we come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories in our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for TeleSUR English. I'm Jose Daniel Lopez. Thank you for watching.